Yeah, I know. It's a real problem. It's a real problem. I know.
The tower. You look at
Broadband.
I didn't see it. No, definitely not.
Yeah.
What is great. Really
Mm.
It's like a hot.
Sorry, you have
I think that's fraud. Oh, yeah. It doesn't buffer.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah. $90.
Huh? Yeah, we can.
Yeah. The problem is that those towns. Town law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I'll say what it really comes down to.
Mhm. Yeah, y'all are hitting it hard.
This is from Kristen Ferry. We've got comment already. You see that? I know that I don't have to read to you to go to meeting anymore.
No, it's not on there.
Really?
What's it say?
It says, please encourage speakers to make sure their microphone is on and to speak into it. Acoustics are poor and listening on a slow link introduces distortion.
On that one?
Unplug it?
Yeah, because if not, it's just me yelling at myself. Not, that may help.
Alright, hot dog, they're moving now.
Everybody wants to hear.
Yeah, that's what they say. How you doing? Nice to meet you. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a bad habit. Booming voice.
Hi, how are you?
I'm on.
Nice to meet you.
It's for it.
Testing.
I didn't hear the scratching.
Hey. Hey. Hello, nice to meet you.
Do you need a,
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it at length. Come up with a new position, change the games halfway through. Not gonna do any of that. No.
You know, the coronavirus would make a great children's story.
They don't really know I think that's prejudice.
Hot dog, Clint Hot.
But it looks like a bumblebee.
How you, Clint Hot?
I figured Pound Harbor had.
It looks like, do you know what those things are like? For physical therapy, when you have like a pressure point, rub it on it, that's what that's.
Yeah, I guess it's just best. I don't know. I'm gonna try it. Let me get
Good, may not look like that.
spread your whole idea.
So I heard that they never
Yeah, really.
really been able to.
We should do it. Yeah. That was awesome.
I've not paid attention. It doesn't surprise me.
Yes.
Everything's working.
Alright.
It's hard to believe.
Good job, Livingston.
Thank you.
All right, y'all ready? All right, I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors to order, and let's start with the allegiance and run us off. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do need to adopt an agenda. We have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda this evening. Anybody have anything we need to add to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I didn't get what I had asked you earlier, but the January 12th minutes stated that the development of Broadband Authority would be researched and discussed at tonight's meeting. Now, it is on the board goals and priorities, but I didn't know, I mean, and it's laid out pretty well.
Yeah.
So I didn't know whether we need to
Yes.
add it to the agenda and talk to it any more tonight, or whether it's.
On Hobbs' cheat sheet here, he does have it down, as you see on the board goals and priorities, and that's Broadband Task Force. That's what we're going to talk about it. I mean, do you want to put it on differently, or?
We plan on talking about it?
Yeah, that's what.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the name of the game on that
All
one.
right, so that was, okay, down under
Number
old
4.
business number 4.
Yeah,
Okay,
or it's
there you
going
go.
to be solely basically Broadband Task Force.
All right,
Yes, sir.
so I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, let's start with public comment. Public comment. Ms. Clemens, please. Brenda?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
Hear me? My name is Brenda Clements, and I'm here tonight to appeal to you to address a safety issue on Main Street. As you know, I am the executive director of the Madison Free Clinic, which is now located at 125 North Main Street. Our entrance and parking lot is in the rear of the building, and we are very happy with our location. We do have an issue with being able to safely exit the alley and make a safe entrance onto Main Street, whether we're headed north or south. Vehicles are usually parked in front of the bulletproof. After myself, patients, and several volunteers, as well as my employees, had near mishaps trying to exit the alley, we asked the sheriff's office to see if they could address this as a safety issue. Their response was to tell us that we would have to address this with the town and with VDOT, which we did. VDOT assessed the situation and saw the need and put up no parking signs. Vehicles continue to park, obstructing the view of northbound cars, and we continue to have patients, volunteers, employees, and even some of our board members experience near accidents, even though there is public parking across the street and at the courthouse. We reported this to the sheriff's office, who informed us that they cannot enforce a state sign without an ordinance. The state police have said that even without an ordinance, they can and should ask the owners of the vehicles to move the cars. In fact, they said if the state police saw someone in their vehicle parking in a no parking zone, they could charge them with a misdemeanor. On several occasions, I have observed deputies chatting with people exiting their vehicles in front of the store. No attempts have been made to enforce the sign. Further down Main Street, near the courthouse, where the road is actually a little wider, there are similar signs that it appears are either being enforced or citizens are complying with. As a taxpayer whose taxes contribute for that sign, as well as for the salaries of those who are sworn to uphold the law, I am concerned that no one seems very concerned about the safety of those trying to exit the alley onto Main Street. It is my hope that you will pass an ordinance allowing parking tickets to be issued to those who park in a no parking zone. Thank you very much for allowing me this time, and thank you for your service to the county. I have prepared for you my comments as well as pictures that illustrate the situation. Thank you very much.
All right, does anybody have comments on this? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Gregg. Sean Gregg.
Well, there are a couple things that could be done. The biggest challenge, quite candidly, is enforcement costs. I mean, I live over in the town of Orange, or near the town of Orange, many of you know. The town of Orange does not enforce, the town of Orange has its own police force. It does not enforce its parking regulations. And the reason it doesn't is it's not cost effective for the town to do so. Madison County's Sheriff's Department and its deputies, they cover the entire county. It's, I suppose, regrettable that the town of Madison does not have its own police department. That could do something. Another thought that just comes to mind is, I think that you're looking at the wrong signs. Since enforcement of this is going to be sporadic, and remember, you can only charge somebody whenever you actually see the violation. It's pretty simple to just move the vehicle. So I'm not sure how easy that would be to enforce in the first place. I think probably a better way to do it, and just using, I see the historic information sign in front of the crosswalk, or behind the crosswalk, I guess. Another way to do this would be to just publicize the fact that there's a blind alley there. And that would be done with another warning sign with a larger, and Mr. McGee, I defer to you. I know that there are some signs that show blind alleys. If the town erect something like that, that could, of course, solve the problem. Another issue is if people are not going to obey the parking, it seems to me that the spaces on Main Street, and again, I believe that that's a town issue, they can park wherever they choose to park. I'm not certain that an ordinance from the county would be particularly effective. I think that if the town chose to pass something, the town could certainly discuss with the sheriff's office the enforcement capability. But, one of the concerns we have with regard to our ordinances is if we develop these things, are there villages? Does Pratt's need, local traffic control? Does Reba need any traffic control? I know, and I'm sure most of you know, that traffic control is a huge problem at the trailheads to White Oak Canyon. Where does the county's enforcement ability end? A fellow by the name of Alexis de Tocqueville said that one of the reasons we have laws is you need to be able to enforce them. And if we pass things that are difficult or impossible to enforce, it tends to undermine respect for the law. I'm happy to take a look at this and give the board a more thorough report. The first I heard of this, I think, was yesterday, but my instinct tells me that the solution to this is probably better signage warning people of the blind alley so that we can avoid these businesses.
Has the town been made aware of this, the town council?
I spoke to, Mayor Lamar, and he is the one, and he and I both went to, the Virginia Department of Transportation, and that's how we got the signs that they came out and did an assessment, they put the signs up, and I think everybody's aware that that alley is a blind alley. So, I mean, so.
Well, it just seems to me if people are already aware of it, why are we having the problem? I think sometimes people are aware of things, but nevertheless, it's helpful to have a visual reminder of those things. And I know that because I've seen them in other communities, if you've got a blind curve or a blind alley, a sign like that, I think might be more effective to solve the problem that you've described.
Chuck?
Washington Circle is also an issue, trying to pull out of there with the vehicles parked around. You can't see, you take a chance and pull out.
Has the business owner they're aware of the situation? You guys?
Yes, they're aware, and, you know, they're not gonna do anything unless they're made to stop parking there.
That's right.
If we pass an ordinance, we've already got a sign. The sign is clear. If we pass an ordinance, it's not going to do anything. This seems to me that this is a town issue. And it should be a town issue in combination with the sheriff's department. I mean, I don't see what an ordinance is gonna do one way or another. It just doesn't, it's not gonna enable anything. And it's not factual that we need the ordinance in the first place. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Lamar did ask the sheriff's department to enforce it. And Sheriff, Weaver said that the only way he could enforce it and write tickets was if the county wrote an ordinance, a parking ordinance, allowing and enabling them to write tickets.
Can the town pass an ordinance?
I would think the town would be able to do this. It's inside of town proper limits, yes.
Instead of the county?
I would think that is where this needs to go and not come to us just on the basis that, frankly, nobody else wants to deal with it, which is a shame because the town has been there. The town emphasizes this to us on a basis. This is a town issue. This is not a county issue. I mean, if not, then probably a different conversation needs to take place, which is unfortunate.
So, yeah, oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I'm gonna ask a question, I guess, Mr. Gregg, but I don't think he knows. But he did point out that parking illegally was a substantial issue, or has been, up at the trailheads. Did we enforce something?
They tow up there all the time.
Yeah, so how can we do it there?
And they're good parallel.
And who did it? Did we?
The sheriff tows vehicles.
Did we pass an ordinance to allow him to do that?
I don't think so.
How did he manage to do it then? Just asking.
Yeah,
Yes.
I lived there for, back in there at one point. The historic information sign can actually be moved. It could and should follow the historical societies if that were to help put something else there. Secondly, when it was a doctor's office and they had to leave the alleyway and Chase Mountains, we couldn't leave the alleyway open for rescue squads. Of course, the sheriff's department would enforce that. So it comes down to the same issue where the town clerk called me to ask me to take care of their flags. And I said, that's a town zoning. That's why she does. So it's passing the buck.
All right. Kevin, since we're sure at VDOT, all you do is work with signs. You know anything about these blind alley signs?
No, I've seen them.
Yeah.
And they're helpful, I guess, places that you've not been before.
I did not know about that alley, genuinely, until this kind of came up.
I didn't think of it that
I didn't. I mean, I pull into Washington Circle all the time, but didn't. But the town meets the first Thursday of the month. So I guess next week, and we can try to bring it up. I can go to that meeting, Carter goes to that meeting. We can try to bring it up there and see if we can get some emphasis on it. and I'm sure the sheriff has a reason why he is going this path, but, I don't want to sit here and rail against him for sure. Because that's not the way to do. This is a town issue though. This needs to be addressed by the town. If we're enforcing traffic and parking ordinances in the town, then I don't see that as exactly right.
Yeah, I got it.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've come close, really, really close to getting clipped coming out of there because I'm on their board. I do their payroll, so every Friday I go in there. And typically I'm in my pickup truck and I'm a little higher and I can see it. But the other day I came out and I waited and I looked and I waited and I looked and then inched out and almost got clipped. It is bad. The folks that run Bulletproof are thumbing their nose at that, just like I went and checked on the vulgar flag they were flying prior to the election. Okay, we had kids going by from Waverly Yale on those school buses twice a day, looking at this flag that I don't even want to repeat what it said. Now, Willie Lamar asked me about 3 months ago, I saw him and he said, could I solicit some help? And I said, what's going on? So he brought this up. I said, okay. I said, I agree because I'm coming in out of there and I agree. So I went to the town council meeting one of the nights and I brought it up. And then I talked to the sheriff's department. And since the town does not have a town sergeant that would write tickets or see to it that it's being towed, as I understand it, the only way that the sheriff's department can do it is through an ordinance from the county. That's just what I found out. But bottom line, be that as it may, something has got to be done. I hate to go back so many years on an issue, but the entrance to the high school was complained about for years until Polly Powell, God rest her soul, got killed. And then something took place. It got fixed. And this is going to happen. And it's not going to be long before it happens. Somebody's going to get T-bone coming out of there. I'm telling you. So we'll go to the town council and press upon them that we've got to figure this out.
Yes, sir.
I realize that you all are trying to figure out the correct path here, but for those of us that are concerned, it seems like the current sheriff's department policy negates enforcement of any parking signs within the town of Madison, whether it's in front of the courthouse or wherever. Because I would assume that it would not be a really good legal precedent to say, well, I'm enforcing this one, but not this one. But as a citizen, we appreciate you all listening to this and trying to pick up and solve this issue. But as citizens, is our next step to also go to the town meeting and try and carry the banner there?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would guess that he's, and this is just a guess. I mean, I'm drawing from Kevin's parallel because during the first stages of COVID last spring, we had major surges of people coming from Northern Virginia and outside of Madison County, and I'm sure some Madison County people, up at White Oak Canyon and then up at Old Rag. And it was a public safety concern. So the sheriff's office started towing vehicles out of there because they couldn't access the major trailheads. What you all are citing is a public safety concern. I would think that there would be something that would be able to be done about that. Especially, I mean, I did drive by there and I looked, and the sign's right there. I mean, good Lord. I would think that this is something that the town should be pressing on the sheriff to do something about. I don't know why we would have to pass an ordinance for us to enforce something that seemingly is already being enforced elsewhere. So I don't know. Next Thursday, I think it's at 7 o'clock. Washington Circle, please come. There is limited seating at the town council meeting, but please emphasize that to them. I think that's kind of maybe the best option at this point. And if we do have to do an ordinance, I mean, please look into it. John Gray always gives us good advice, our attorney. We'll see where we can go from there, but I doubt we have to pass an ordinance to enforce parking and public safety issues. Anybody else got anything on this one? What? Your name, sir?
Andrew Clemens.
There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. We good on this one? Please come. We'll emphasize as well. I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Other public comment. Kristen Ferry says, do we have a county ordinance to get the sheriff to enforce the state law that makes bank robberies a crime? I don't know. I don't know. Other public comment. All right, now we're going to a special appearance. Ms. Crawford, I hear you're going to tell us about COVID-19 and Madison County. Please come to the podium and tell us about all the fun we're having.
For those of you who don't know, Ms. Crawford has been our intern since this past summer. She's a Master of Public Health student at Emory University. This is, I think it's a requirement of her course of study here. Those of you might remember the Department of Labor and Industry required the county to do training on COVID prevention and how to look at that. She produced a video for that back in the day. Now, this is one of those things that just kind of went by, but it was a problem at the time that she helped us to resolve. So this is a report on what you see in COVID and Madison next year.
Thank you.
Take my mask down for this. Good evening again, everyone. And as Mr. Hobbs said, I'm Diane Crawford. I'm an MPH graduate. And I have the privilege of this past fall working with Mr. Hobbs as an intern. Part of that project is our presentation tonight, which is looking at a summary overview. I know we're still in the heart of the pandemic, but it's a little takeaway of our past year and how, as a county, we've been impacted by COVID-19. So just jumping in, an overview of what I'll be sharing with you all is looking at the disease and a timeline of its spread here throughout the US and in Madison County. Comparative statistics, looking at how other places have been impacted in relation to Madison County. Then guidelines that have been passed by the Virginia Department of Health and other federal guidelines. The impact of the pandemic in some more specific ways within Madison County and feedback on that. What has been Madison County's actions, funding support, recommendations moving forward, and some additional information. So these are some references where I got some information. We did have on our website some very good account of what has been passed by the Virginia Department of Health and how it's impacted Madison, VDH, the governor's executive orders, Centers for Disease Control, NIH, and the HHS. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this here, but someone mentioned getting a kid's toy. Maybe it'll be, if you can see this, in the shape of the virus itself. It'll be interesting. But basically, as you all may know already, be privy to, thank you. Madison
not Madison County, but coronavirus, also known as SARS-CoV-2, has several modes of transmission. And primarily, it's been from person to person. So whether it's through close contact with respiratory droplets, through airborne transmission, or contacting contaminated surfaces, those are some of the ways that it's transmitted. And this is just a visual of that. So if you have an individual or 3 that are infected within the population, they sneeze, they cough without covering it, it's airborne, it can be inhaled, or upon surfaces, if it's touched, once within the body, you have the spread taking place. This is our timeline. So on March 11th, 2020, World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a pandemic globally. And then on March 12th, we had the state of Virginia declare a national emergency. On the 13th of March, so days or the next day, there was a national emergency declared across the country. And then the same day, we had on a local level here in Madison, a declaration of a state of emergency. The Supreme Court then issued closure, and we had also guidelines for COVID-19 on March 16th. March 17th, we had Governor Northam, I'm not saying his name right, Northam. He did issue some orders for closures to our restaurants, gyms, and theaters. And on the 23rd, we were experiencing our first COVID-19 case here in Madison County. And we also had some preventative measures that started being spread at that time. Okay, so looking at how the spread of the virus has impacted the state of Virginia versus Madison County on a population level, Virginia state has, from our recent census, about 8 million or 8.5 million. Madison County, a little over 13,000. And so here are reported cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. Within the state of Virginia, there is about 336,000 plus, hospitalizations over 17,000, and deaths over 4,000, almost 5,000. Now this is reported from December, so the numbers at this present time have of course increased. And within Madison County, the reported cases at that time were 285, hospitalizations 17, and deaths 4. So just from raw numbers, we can see quite a gap from a statewide level compared to our county. And then this shares with us a little bit more comparison across some of our neighboring counties, the Rappahannock-Rapidan Health District, which we're part of, Virginia State, and the US as a whole. In these statistics, I did per capita calculation and I multiplied it by 100,000 people within the population. And if we look here, in general, Madison County has smaller numbers for cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. Just some outstanding figures. If you do a comparison across county, Culpeper, this is as of January 12th. Culpeper had more than double the amount of cases that Madison County had. And if you look at it across, the health district in the state of Virginia, the numbers were doubled. Country-wise, it's even more. In terms of hospitalizations, I found it interesting. We don't have 100,000 people in Madison County, but in the comparison of that percentage or number of people, we had a smaller number compared to the rest of the counties, Orange and Culpeper, also the health district, also Virginia State. But then this is kind of like an outlier number. I'm not sure. I've been double checking my calculation there. But one of the reasons why I think countrywide there's been such a smaller number for hospitalizations is because I know we had so much limitation in people who could get there. People were being turned away. So just not having the capacity to take people in as well. And then in terms of deaths, we also had a smaller number across the board. Okay, here are some demographic statistics. It's based on the Rappahannock-Rapidan Health District, also looking at cases, hospitalizations, and deaths as of January 12th. And the main takeaway here is in terms of age, a greater impact was felt for those who were 80 plus years old at 53%. We had deaths impacting our older members of the population. In terms of race and ethnicity, we had a greater impact across cases, hospitalizations, and deaths for those who identified as being Caucasian or white. And then we also, for gender, had the majority across cases, hospitalizations, and deaths were males. Okay, the Virginia Department of Health, and also on a federal level, we had guidelines issued. Just a brief review of these. I know it's been circulating in several ways so that we can be aware of it. The main takeaway is there were guidelines for limiting the size of assemblies, physical distancing, wearing of masks, getting tested when needed, washing your hands, especially when touching other surfaces frequently, avoiding touching your face, sneezing and coughing into a tissue or into your elbow, and then disinfecting frequently items and surfaces. Some takeaways from the president's office. This was taken when President Trump was still in the presidency. And some of the actions that took place were early action to cut off travel to China, building the world's leading testing systems in the virus, enacting mitigation measures to help with slowing the spread, mobilizing public and private sectors to secure needed supplies, taking action to protect vulnerable Americans, and launching efforts to deliver vaccines and therapeutics as soon as possible, providing support for workers and businesses, and paving the way for reopening plans for America, and then surging resources to hotspots that were affected by the virus. Some federal recommendations. As vaccines came out, the CDC had recommendations focused on targeting groups that were considered vulnerable in the event that there were limitations in the supplies for vaccines. And these groups were mainly those who were healthcare personnel or working in essential and critical roles or industries, people who were at high risk because of comorbidities, and also those who were 65 plus years old. Okay, now bringing it home, the impact on Madison County of the pandemic. So for those who are living here with me, I know you also went through closures. As of March 13, there were many closures within Madison County, whether it was our schools, parks, recreational areas, major tourism areas, such as the Shenandoah National Park. Public event venues also had closures. And for our Madison County employers and employees, some of the strategies that took place were enacting the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which helped with the extension of regular pay and other time off benefits for some of our citizens here. And then we also had, for those who, this was especially benefit for those who were frontline workers, such as the EMS. Then telecommuting and flexible work hours were made available in adjusting to the pandemic. There was a hot wash. I had the privilege to attend and get some feedback. And many of our workers here in Madison did share on the COVID fatigue or frustration syndrome, which they attributed to overwork or not having the space or time to take needed breaks. And this is a continued experience as the pandemic persists. I also looked at the long-term care facilities here in Madison. One in particular was the Mountain View Nursing Home, and they shared about some of the restrictions preventing them from having families and friends come and visit with the residents, which increased the workload on their staff and making that more of a challenge in terms of navigating during these times. This was an interesting article that was shared with me by Mr. Hobson. Sure, I hope I'm saying his name correctly.
Close.
Okay. You can correct me. This was coming out of UVA, and it was a prediction of the increase in infections as the new year was turning. So here you see across different regions in Virginia, the expectation was there was going to be an increase. When we look at Madison County, that was on a regional level, central and northern across Virginia. But when we look specifically at Madison County, statistics were showing that we were going to have a plateau, and not only that, but a decline in the number of cases. One of the reasons I think that's attributable to is the fact that we are located in a rural setting. So our homes are more spaced out. We're not in an urbanized area where, the infection is spreading a lot more rapidly. Some of the actions of Madison County. So there's a lot here. It's a little tiny. I don't know if you can see it all, but I'm just going to highlight a few of them. One of the main things, we're looking at the closures that we had taking place, starting from the circuit court on the 23rd. Then we also had the stay-at-home order on March 30th. That lasted until about, June 2nd, when we started moving into this was the second phase. Phase 1 was on May 8th, and then phase 2 was on June 2nd, measures being taken for reopening. And then in September 10th, we had the publication of the COVID-19 Emergency Action Plan for Madison County. And then it was shared that December 28th, Moderna vaccines arrived here in Madison County for distribution. More details on these items can be seen in the appendix of the summary report. In terms of funding, one of the major sources of funding that was received was through the CARES Act. And the total amount was over $2 million, which was utilized in many different ways, whether it was helping to pay for medical expenses, public health expenses, payroll, etc. It was definitely a needed funding for that time. And here are some other fundings that came in. We had the Virginia Department of Elections Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Grant, among others, were also received at that time. Most monies, looking back at the funding support, went towards our school systems and also the sheriff office. Recommendations and moving forward. So it's been a long journey with COVID-19. We're not necessarily out. I was listening today to reports on new variants of the virus, but one of the biggest things was sticking together throughout the pandemic. And from feedback from some of the county leaders, continuing the current proactive measures has been very helpful. Using masks, installation of plexiglass in workplaces, enforcing social distancing. Some of these things have helped to keep us going as a community and workforce. Some recommendations that were received were, for example, more space when we're talking about voter registration, developing policies in our animal control area, and also protocol for managing the CARES Act funding. So what to do, how to handle when we have to deal with large amounts of funding coming in frequently. And then we also had mental health support. It would be good, it was shared to have more mental health support during these times for county workers and citizens, and also time off to help with better managing the COVID fatigue frustration. So in conclusion, Madison County continues to have a relatively low number of COVID-19 cases, which is good news, yes? And hopefully, at least it's my desire, we can, with the rest of our nation and the world, reach a point where there's herd immunity and we don't need to live in the current circumstances that we are. I'll turn it over for a moment of questions or discussion.
That was very delicious. Who has questions?
I have one question. One of the earlier slides, you were talking about limiting the size of assemblies. Does that apply to governing bodies?
I believe it applies to all of us, yes. But I don't know, Mr. Hobbs,
Because
is that
I think I've read
exempt from
different
governing
things
bodies?
where,
We are actually,
Yes. We are exempt.
I believe local governments are exempt.
Okay.
Certainly attempt to keep the size of the meetings, what's happening with the televising, the two-way communications.
Right.
Far.
Okay, well, there's an exemption for local governments. Thank you.
One of the things that Diane has done for us is compiled and sorted all the documents that we've gone through, and she's taken the most important ones and put them in the appendix of the report. So we'll have a document that captures what happened this past year. One of the difficulties was that we were in the middle of this, but she had to cut a report off at some point. So this is 2020 report. I'm not sure. It's just
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to get a copy of that summary report, Mr. Hobbs will have that available. And also, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Hobbs for the experience of my internship. It's been quite a learning experience. I've enjoyed it and I appreciate his mentorship. Also, Mr. Sear, thank you. He's been a very good support as well. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors, also our Madison County employers and employees for their feedback, and also the citizens of Madison County. We will get through this by God's grace. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
When did you graduate?
Spring in May.
Congratulations. That's great. All right, we don't have any other special appearances. Consent agenda, we have minutes from January 12th, 2021.
Yeah,
What?
I was on, never mind.
Yes, you were on.
Remote.
Interweb. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Always a pleasure. Ms. Fry, I hear we have an IDA applicant. And we have actually already interviewed this individual for another position. Mike Snyder for the IDA.
Yeah.
Gentleman that interviewed, that works for Carlisle and
Yeah,
Dressed in a suit.
yeah, and he's up there, I think he's managing or running the show in a suit, yes. That's correct. And I think he's doing some stuff up there at Madison Sidewalk. What do you all want to do? You just want to re-interview him? Want to put him on there?
I don't think we need to re-interview him.
No, I don't either. Mr. Chairman, I move that we install Mike Snyder on the IDA.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion?
I believe the This is for an unexpired term that runs to April 11, 2022.
All right. There you go. Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Good job, Ms. Fry. Good job. How about this RRCSB? Can't solicit anybody for that one?
And I asked Valerie Ward, she's been looking as well, but it's a big commit. It's 2 meetings a month. I mean, now we're just online, which helps. But going forward, if we do start holding meetings in person, they're 3 hours each sometimes. And twice a month, so.
Do you have any friends that have about 6?
Today was only an hour
month?
though.
Well, maybe less than 6. Trace, you have friends.
Not an issue to put on that, right?
Talk to those 4 or 5 people and see if you can get them to, maybe they would qualify for this.
And I don't know, we can ask the sheriff's office if they want to put, because we did that with social services, and I think that really has brought, a different dynamic to the board.
And maybe that's the direction.
And there is, Culpeper Chief of Police does represent on that board.
All right. Well, maybe we can ask the sheriff's office. They potentially have an applicant or somebody that would like to be on that board. That'd be great. Keep looking. All right. Constitution, yes, ma'am? What?
I talked with Mr. Lindsay, he's on the building code board of appeals, and he no longer wants to serve. His term is up in March. I think I put on your sheet some, that whole board, there are several of them, 3 or 4 of them, their terms are up in March 2021. I told them, they said they may know someone, but I didn't know if you all wanted me to advertise that or if you know anybody. I don't think they meet that much. But
There you go, Tracy. Find somebody else. I don't know. Do y'all want to advertise or do you want to see if
I
we
know
can find
somebody.
Yeah, I'd say there's a handful of builders we probably get.
Yeah, let's hold off on advertising.
All right.
Doesn't that cost us money?
extensively.
Ask Gracie how much it costs.
But we appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
How much, Ms. Fry, how much does it cost? All right. What? If free market works, let's see if we can find somebody. It sounds like we may have somebody that we could do, and it looks like we're gonna need to find a slew of people here pretty promptly. Hopefully a bunch of them wanna go back on there, but do we wanna go ahead and reach out to them and see if we can see who wants to stay and who wants to go, so we could maybe hit this before we get to the last minute? 3/10/2021, that's not too far away.
So is Mr. Lindsay staying until the 10th of March, did you say?
I mean, I don't think they do that much as far as meeting. So, he's on there now, but he told me today, I don't want to do it more. But he's concerned about me.
Everybody know Mr. Lindsay?
I talked to him just through the phone first time today.
Wasn't Phil?
I said, nah.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Let's see if we can round up some people. Maybe we can get on there and get this thing going. We all know a bunch of builders.
Ms. Berry also asked, is this on the website?
What? Oh.
About the boards and how to apply?
That is.
All right, so if you're watching virtually,
You can't hear who's in the audience. They're saying they couldn't hear what Ms. Fry was saying.
Ms. Fry says we need some people for the Building Code of Appeals Board. It's on the website and we're taking solicitations. We're not gonna advertise right now. But we have 4 spots that are gonna be open on 3/10/2021. So, got some.
There's a form to fill out, and send it, that's right.
All right, there's a form. Yeah, turn on your mic, Hobson, I don't repeat this stuff. form, send it to Ms. Fry. There we go. Anything else?
No, sir.
Very good. Ms. Fry, you got anything else?
Just the ones of you that haven't done their statement of economic interest, I need
Come
it.
and see. All right, moving on. Well, Mike Moscow, you're in the back corner and start there normally. What's going on with the planning commission?
Well, we have, as you know, been doing quite a bit of work on the broadband issue. And we're proposing that, because it's one issue that comes up repeatedly upon us, approving certain types of special use permits, and they don't have any approval. We think it's probably time to clarify that issue. So those are the two things that we will be having our meeting next week. I understand y'all are canceling yours. We have a few things we want to discuss, so we are having that meeting.
And congratulations on being chairman again.
Thank you.
Livingston, you migrated, so.
People are saying they can't hear anybody.
All right,
I could just pass the microphone.
there you go, Livingston. Go to Roger Berry. Or you're holding the microphone. What are you doing? What's going on in the county, Livingston? What are you doing?
Well, there's a lot going on.
Good.
We're getting fiber in tomorrow between this building and the one down at the other side to get
Great.
some service extended. Till we can get the fiber running from ANS or Segra. They're kind of going back and forth with each other to give us the best deal on that service. The data wires went in down there this week. Went down there and watched them yesterday for a while, and they're also putting in the power, and everything's moving right along. Put the Geocom server in for Brian today. I don't have my list in front of me, but it's been busy. There's a lot going on. Renovations, we're expecting it to all be done on time and get in there in March 1st.
Right.
So, many trouble tickets, things of that nature, account resets. And let me turn this over to Mr. Berry.
You don't pass that to Steve Hoffman the same way that he just gave it to you. We're gonna be all disappointed. What's going on, Roger? Tell us about the renovation a little bit.
Well, they've done all the demo, except for one, bathroom and one sink area. They're leaving that for the workers to use and do that last. The walls are pretty much up. Like Bruce said, they've run the data lines. They've cut the floor for the plumbing. They're moving right on along.
Look good down there?
It does. I mean, for what it is, but it does. It's laid out real well.
Good.
Had a little snow event last night, sleet event, whatever it was. But we're still trudging along.
Good. All right, give it to Steve Hoffman with the same gumption that Livingston gave it to you.
You got nothing to say?
You don't have nothing to say.
Well, give it to Tracy. This is a first time.
Shauna told him to be quiet.
Tracy.
All I have other than what I'm here for and the broadband committee stuff, I did hear, I may word this wrong, I think there's a bill before the General Assembly that for populations under 25,000, they're trying to get that financial information, long document down to the one pager again. But they don't know if it's going to get approved or not.
Right.
Which I know would make getting people in these committees a lot easier.
No. All right, that's the dim joke.
Okay. I got it. I'm coming to you.
On my lap.
Coming to you.
Working real poorly. Has anybody thought of a name for that building down the hill? Are we calling, I mean, I consider this like the admin building. I mean, what are we calling the health department building? Is that what we're gonna call it from now on? Don't know. 410's down the hill?
This is 414.
The annex, huh? We need to be thinking of some names. I'm not much on 410 or 414. MJ.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone knows this or not, but January is a busy month for the finance department. Our W-2s and Well, every month is a busy month, unfortunately, but the W-2s and 1099s are due out on February 1st. Our W-2s are already out. They're done, distributed. Candace has very nicely been helping us do our 1099s, and we should have them done tomorrow. In terms of getting the board last week passed a large number of budget adjustments, and Stephanie Mary has promised to help us get them into the system so that within 5 to 7 business days after the end of the month, we should have pretty up-to-date financial reports out to departments. And we're actually pretty darn current on our bills right now too. I have to say, we're experiencing a severe problem with mail.
Everybody is.
And there are many, many days where we get 2 pieces of mail. I mean, we're getting two pieces of, no, because it means that the bills come in really late and then it puts a lot of pressure on us. A particular concern is our credit card bills. The last couple of months, we've actually had to call Bank of America and have them fax us some. So that continues to be, a pretty big concern. So I've also been helping departments with answer questions related to their numbers for budgets. However, I haven't put together, I have a number of budgets, including both finance and IT. They will not be done this week. I'm hoping by sometime next week, maybe they're done, but the IT budget is the one that's very concerning to me because there's been so many changes this year. So you can't just take last year and, make it the same. But this has been my IT week because we need to kickstart this process to get it moving. And I can't get everything done and then work on IT. I have to get this IT stuff moving. So what we've done so far in the last couple of weeks is the Cherry Becker digital contract it's on Jack's desk for signature. Or in his email. It's been through all levels of review. Tyler, we tentatively have a meeting scheduled with them on Friday. It's not the kickoff meeting, but we're hoping to have that a walkthrough of how they approach things. If you recall, RDA proposed a very significant increase in our contract, and I'm still working with them. I had a long conversation with them on Friday, and they had to go back to their attorneys. But one of the biggest things is our Linux server is extremely out of date, and both RDA and Bruce are very concerned about it. So built into that contract is they were going to build an extra capacity so we could move to the cloud if we needed to, but we've all decided that we need to do that now as opposed to as a backup measure. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is migrating RDA to the cloud. And that needs to happen relatively soon.
What about the inflated numbers that they gave us prior? Have you negotiated those prices down?
No, actually, so I can come up with some comparative numbers because it includes things. So for instance, right now, social services pays a separate fee to RDA, and that's rolled into that number. Plus the cloud-based service, if we were to go out and purchase it, is worth about $5,000. So it's not as big of an increase as you might think it is, but I can put together a comparison on that. They will not budge on the $80,000. They're not going to budge. In fact, they've been pretty lenient with us because we haven't paid them yet. We didn't have an appropriation until last week, but I don't have a contract either, so I don't really want to pay them.
The mail.
So we got a good piece of news today, which is, if you recall, when we were going through pricing with Tyler, they had given us one quote that had a discount in it, and then they said they had to change it, and so it ended up costing more. But they came back today and they gave us discounts in the pricing that the board has appropriated, but they also issued a $36,000 credit memo to us related to our experience in 2014. And we can use it at any time for anything. So my recommendation is to use it next year when we have to pay annual support. get a year free on them, but that's like a one-time plus. Two other things, ANS, and Bruce may be able to explain this better, but when we went through this process in the fall and did all the procurement related to the software and the servers, our consultants were working with ANS to try to figure out how to configure those servers, and now they've come back and told us our servers may not be adequate, I guess. Bruce, you might want to explain that in more detail. I don't really understand it because, I'm not sure any of us understand it right now, but there's this issue now where ANS has come back to us and said, we may need more.
Well, they went to migrate the existing servers to the new VMs that we got. And then they said that they didn't feel comfortable doing it because they wanted to make sure that they wasn't going to take up the space for the new ERP systems. So my question to them is, well, first off, why are we hearing about it now? And second, how much is it going to cost us? And what exactly do we need to do? And they haven't provided that back to us yet. And it may turn out that they don't need to, but they're just a little nervous now if they move everything over the existing to it. Yeah, that they will impact being ready for the ERP. So we should have an explanation back soon on that as to why they're concerned.
And so there's one other thing I wanted to say, which is there was a conversation about this records management system or Laserfish as a records management system in last week's budget meeting. And I have gotten clarification from them that right now the contract covers records management implementation and licenses for finance, treasurer, commissioner of revenue. When I gave them my user account, I included all of the people that would be using Tyler as well, plus the people in county administration. They do not recommend trying to implement more than 3 departments at one time. They said it's too much. They think it'll impair the integrity of the project if they try to do that.
We've talked about this Laserfish countless times now.
Right.
Are they implementing it currently?
So Laserfish is like it's called an ECM or electronic content management. It has the capacity. It certainly has the capacity to track documents and dates and things like that. And it does that by assigning fields, and you can customize them. So every document could have 10 fields, and they could be when it expires, when it starts, the value, all that kind of stuff. And then you can extract reports off of that. That's the way you would monitor contracts and things like that. But it does many different things. It does it does electronic it handles electronic transactions for business type things like purchase orders and stuff like that. But it also, you can store whatever it's like a file cabinet.
Are we implementing, or are we putting hard content on Laserfish?
Well, we haven't started yet, but that's certainly the idea.
When does that start?
Well, when we have our kickoff meeting, we need to talk about it. And I can't really tell you until I have all of this figured out with a schedule, and I don't have that done yet.
Are we like 2 weeks away from a kickoff meeting, or like a month, or?
No, I think that we should have all of our kickoff meetings done sometime in February.
Oh, that's what I'm looking for.
But one of the problems with our department right now is that we're still pretty understaffed, and until we get staffed up, I don't know how much work we're going to be able to do on records retention. But the idea is really, if we have this extra person in our department, which hopefully we will, I really think that we can handle a lot of record. I think we could do a lot with getting a lot of our records into electronic format and then just, getting rid of them basically.
We've talked about the contracts, the process of getting procurement done correctly on all of this.
Right.
Hearing that the kickoff meetings are going to happen in February should be exciting to everybody.
Yes,
and hopefully, and I'm sure it comes with tremendous amounts of work for everybody except us. good luck. We support you. But it's exciting. I mean, and being able to move into this next wave of technology should make government more efficient.
I want to emphasize that there's, I can't, I have to juggle finance and IT deadlines because I can't let all my IT deadline, if I do all this finance stuff, then I'm a month out on IT. So I gotta do one, then the other, one, then the other. That's
Just
where I
exciting.
am. But I'm not terribly, let me put it this way, compared to where I was in December, I'm relatively pleased with where I am right now. I think we're getting a lot done. And Angie has started to work 40 hours a week mainly. And that's also very much helped.
Good.
So.
Anything else?
No, that's enough.
All right. There you go.
What do I do with this?
No, I don't know. You have to keep it for a little bit. All right. Clarissa Berry is our only constitutional officer. She's on the go to meeting. Clarissa, do you have anything? Thank you. We're all excited for you. Thank you. Hobbs, do we have, thank you. We look forward to the request. We talked about last Thursday at the budget meeting, putting Clarissa's friend, I think he's OAR, what's his name, Kevin?
Neil Goodlow.
Neil Goodlow. Are they coming this week or are they coming next week, maybe? Well, I'm looking at last week's list. I'm sure it is involved.
Understood it was the funding piece of the OAR, but did you want Mr. Goodlow at that same session?
I thought the conversation was to put the two.
Yeah, he's got a report he'd like to give to the county. It's a county unique report on some of the statistics he's looked at. I think they speak to, and Clarissa, you can speak to this better than me. I think they speak to some of what Clarissa would like to bring to the board.
So I understood that it was OAR, the funding side was to be combined. I did not understand Mr. Goodlow was supposed to be stacked on his various
Do
things.
we want to put them together?
We'll work on that.
Okay.
It might not be possible given only 2 days. We'll figure that out.
It's a clue.
Thank you, Hobbs. Good luck with your dog, Clarissa. It sounds like it's going well. Just since Clarissa brought up the body cams, the deputy came in here about 5 o'clock because we set the alarm off again. I walked back outside, and he was out in the parking lot, and he showed me what he's got going on with his car, which is all the stuff that the sheriff requested with Clarissa and everybody when it pertained to CARES, and that was the laptops and the cameras in the cars. And he had his body camera on, which wasn't like a whole vest or anything. It was just a little piece. I asked him about, he was talking about the CAD system, which I have vague understandings of, that goes through Brian and goes through dispatch and the sheriff's office. He said that what they're able to do now, when it pertains to reports and efficiency is so far above where they were a little bit ago. So it didn't look complicated. It looked like it was something that was easy, and they were able to identify different calls and calls at one house multiple times, and they could track history instead of having to roll back over dispatch. It looked like, I'm sure there's kinks in the system and growing pains that go with it, but he was very positive about it. So, I mean, it was good to see something that we went through. It was a hard process, worked out fairly well. If you see a deputy, ask them, maybe they'll tell you all about it. So it was interesting to me, at least. All right, moving on.
A quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Last week, Cardi, wanted to know if we get any budget information ahead of Thursday.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Are we?
Just got compiled just before the meeting on here, so I'm sure I stick before you leave.
It's on this stick?
It's on.
No.
Oh, okay, it's on that.
It's on the master stick down here.
Yeah.
We can share it, and we can pull some information, and that should work. Oh, good, thank you. All right, moving on. Ms. Hobbs, tell us about board goals and the broadband task force proposal.
Yes, sir. You have on your screen, and I think it's page 51 of your package, the goals that we talked about on the 4th and then updated at the last board meeting. Running forward with this, I think at the bottom of the list, there was this idea about doing something with human resources that was not on the earlier edition, and to do something that would better coordinate pre-K and childcare that I work with Mr. Gallo on. The problem we have there is the conundrum is, what would the county do? And the conclusion we came to was we could focus on standing up some sort of task force that would pull together the groups that serve the pre-K population, and maybe there could be some overlap in their services, and they could find some ways to work together, because childcare and pre-K education is a current issue in Madison County. It's a matter of we know there's a problem, but we don't. We're looking for a solution.
So we've added to the list the human resources component. It's kind of a lot heavier.
That's more carried forward from last year.
Yes, sir.
For your discussion.
And then the add of number 7. Everybody good with that? I mean, I think that's a good one. I assume we'll reach out to small and large childcare along with the education sector, and go from there.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
I think, I was going to give Charlotte a call. We can toss around who the stakeholders may be. You could probably help since you've got children. Anyhow, we'll get on it.
Good. Good. You want us to, Cardi and Ms. Walkman, y'all working on the childcare deal? Y'all want to start kind of getting stuff together and get the task force rolling? I mean, is that the way to start this show, Hobbs? I would think so.
I defer to Mr. Gallo on that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean,
Amber, do you want to work on that with him, since you probably know more about
yeah,
it
would you?
instead of me?
Yeah.
All right.
Do this.
What about if
That would
Cardi
be better.
and Amber work on this?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, my thoughts very quickly would be for us just to talk about what sort of talent or stakeholders we should involve in this. And keep it to 4 or 5 or so. All right, so.
And the emphasis will be collaboration of groups.
Right.
And pooling of resources, and hopefully not bringing in a whole lot of taxpayer money. I gotta say it.
Had to put that in there. I agree.
I don't know. All right, let's go to everybody good, and that's good, we're moving on that. What about the broadband task force? Mr. Hobbs?
Yes, this was talked about, and I think it emerged from the survey work and board discussion and general vibe in the community that this might be the county's next big push. And certainly want to support that in different ways. I think it's important to get this started off on the right foot. I know the planning commission is in support of doing something more and better. But I worry that just going straight to a broadband authority might look like we're doing something, but might not accomplish much. So what I'd advocate is standing up a task force that would articulate what it is we're trying to do, set some goals, talk about funding and this and that. This is going to be a decades-long effort. I'm not sure anybody in Virginia, unless you're a Blacksburg or in the urban areas, really have the broadband problem figured out. So it's going to be a whole lot more difficult in rural Virginia to actually make good progress on this. So for example, there's this intertwining of broadband internet and cell phone service, and it's almost two sides of the same coin, because I know at my house, we work off of the cell phone internet. And so that might be a good interim step to this. Everybody that I talk to says that wires to houses is the end game, but most of the grant activity you see seems to pay for wireless infrastructure. So my suggestion is that the chairman, with the board's blessing, of course, stand up some sort of task force that could go through, what is it we're trying to do, talk about what we have to work with, develop some proposals to the board in terms of how this broadband committee would be structured, what kind of staffing the group would need, whether we need money to pay for consultants. There's just a lot of unknowns going into this. So I guess not to be sexist, but it's a matter of put a few good men on it, and let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I would guess that the emphasis being on wireless is based on speed of implementation compared to the slow and cost. Yeah, exactly. The slow and cost that goes along with running wires to everybody. And we heard about the lawsuit running fiber on easements that went with the rural electrification, which is super, super interesting. We'll see how that goes, and we can go from there.
So the idea would be to task a few good men, and the rest of us would be resource folks, so that a problem is that a lot of us have day jobs, and to go to a whole nother series of meetings is just going to be overwhelming at some point. So be ready to help where we can, but to not be full committee members, if you will.
All right. Looking at you down there.
Yeah.
Game of broadband.
Yeah, I got something. So I guess last meeting, it was we loosely identified the beginnings of it, and Gracie put it in the paper, and so now I've been getting calls about who was on this broadband task force. So here's my thoughts. My thoughts are that Kevin and myself and Peter work, and Mike, we get Francois and Tracy, so be 5 of us get together, and we to help with Mr. Hobbs's suggestions. We not only come up with the goals for the broadband authority, if we in fact go with a full-blown authority, that would be have to be decided, because I can't sit here right now and tell you what commitments they can make on the county. And I'd like to find out all that stuff before we call it an authority. But Mr. Work certainly put out here, facilitating the establishment. The first path is to create a short-term advisory committee. We call it a task force, whatever, for the purposes of facilitating the establishment of a formal broadband authority, define the scope of its powers, identify county residents and officials with the requisite skills and experience to contribute effectively, and then also to help with what Mr. Hobbs just laid out as what the goals would be and all that kind of stuff. So I can see the five of us on this task force getting together, and we accomplish those things. Perhaps some people on the task force would like to remain on the authority. I think there's probably ought to be one board member on the authority. There can only be 2 planning commissioners, Mike, so I'll come from you, as to which, so you don't have to,
I mean, it looks like Mr. Work back here and Francois, who Mr. Moscow tasked with working on broadband, that would be the natural,
I agree.
Easy choice there. Kevin's knowledge of signs and your go get them attitude. I mean, it would seem like that would work. Trace, the only comment Hobbs and I've talked about this a little bit is leaving. What about leaving Tracy as the liaison? I'd assume that you'll probably capitalize on her time and Liggins' time, and I'm sure Hobbs, Livingston. So you're going to tap into a bunch of these people. But
all right, so we just go with the 4 of us.
4 of y'all.
2 planning commissioners and Kevin and me.
Yeah. And chances are you're going to start tapping into resources like Clint. And I'm sure there's other people.
Well, right.
Trying to figure out exactly where we need to go.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned we're going to have to buy you badges since we've got so many task forces now.
Yeah.
But let's see. I mean, it sounds like getting this task force together and getting some of those goals and understanding what the authority actually is. Because we do understand that authorities in some respect have borrowing power, and there's all kinds of issues to go along with that legal term, I guess. See if we can get this thing going.
Yeah. I would like to give a shout out one more time to Francois and Mr. Work for a really good memorandum and a great place to, I feel like I can put my foot in a starting block.
Exactly right. Mr. Work, do you have anything to add on this?
Nothing that we haven't said already.
I guess, Mike, you figure that out. I say, would you be willing to do it?
All right, so we've got the first task force we've got is the child care. We're going to start with Amber and Cardi, and I'm sure that will grow slowly, not to 25. And the other one is we've got broadband, which is Cardi and Kevin, and probably Mr. Work and Francois. And we go from there. And then Tracy Blacks is your main liaison. There you go. All right. Anything else on goals, Mr. Hobbs?
No, we'll keep circling back to this document. I suppose at some point the board ought to say, yes, this is good, and then we'll start putting timelines on each piece as we're able.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I noticed on one of the goals of Mr. Hobbs' memo here is to get some assistance in grant writing, policy research. That would be a really big issue with any broadband authority or anything created there, because all the money's floating around and having to write the request for it.
Yes, sir.
So that would be a big issue.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mike.
We've been round and round with this grant writing business. We do have talented department heads that apply for grants in their fields all the time. I think maybe in the broadband area, we do have access to our friend Patrick Moning up at the Planning District Commission that we could ask with this. The better thing though is to find our plan, and then, because any grant giving agency will want to see how what they're funding when it comes to infrastructure fits into some plan. So that's the issue we have is if you know, I've told everybody if $10 million fell out of the sky, I'm not sure what we'd spend it on other than we'd have to spend a year trying to figure that out. So we need, if we do go down the path of applying for grants, we need to be pretty targeted about what we ask for.
I don't know, we got 2.4 million. We did pretty well with that, Hobbs. Come on. No, we need grants and
School kids and ambulances and buses, we can.
we need to get this thing going. This COVID is really shining a light on our deficiencies on the internet. All right. Anything else on goals?
Sure.
All right. Tracy, tell us about this new idea of your private use and workspace.
A new idea?
New idea. We've been talking about for 3 or 4 years now. Looks like we're about where we need to be.
Yeah, and COVID has also added a light on that as well, which we already knew. But still same major rules, no storefronts, just people who simply need the space for either because of COVID, because they need internet, or an incubator type situation. And I think Mr. Hobson's pointed out too, we're in a peak, so if we want to wait till after, February to see how things go, we can do that as well. But I've already got interest, and I can reach back out to the folks who were interested before, and it wouldn't take. We have the rural entrepreneurship thing coming up as well.
You've got 2 contracts in front of us. You've got one for the Nick. Bear with me. Yeah, you've got one for business incubator, short-term nonprofit service provider startup. And then you've got the daily office use.
Yeah.
One being a little bit longer term, one being just on a spot type of deal. Sean, Greg, you see issues with these?
The biggest issue is the policy. I think something that might be helpful is if there's gonna be somebody in a space for a length of time, and thank you, sir.
That's great.
The rent's pretty cheap.
Yes.
And, how long, do we want to put a cap in terms of how long somebody can get this relatively low rent? If the idea is that these are incubator type situations, it seems to me that, the idea of an incubator is that, the eggs hatch, so to speak. And it might be appropriate that we put some timeline on terms of how long people can be in there, because what happens, and the best example I can think of is rent control in New York. If you give people sort of an assumed property interest in these properties, then suddenly we are renting space at considerably less than market value. That is something to consider. That's not really a legal issue so much as it's a policy issue. The leases themselves, I think, and you'll recall several years ago, I suggested that all of these leases really do need to be, particularly for any length of time, do need to be signed by the county itself rather than having that authority delegated, because it's important that the county knows who has been given these who's been given the opportunity to lease these spaces. Those are my general comments.
Agreed. I thought I did see something on here that's at 48 months. I thought I did read that somewhere, that the term could be no longer than that.
I think there have been several editions of these things floating around. I think the idea is though that
to exceed 24 full calendar months. Excuse me, I apologize.
the concern is this is temporary service.
Absolutely.
It's not a long-term rent. We're not trying to maximize rent revenue. This is about giving folks a hand up, and then, like use Mr. Greg's analogy, at some point eggs hatch and it's fly little bird fly.
If if, the terms of the agreement are month-to-month commencement, on the date first noted above, not to exceed 24 full calendar months, do we need something better than that when it pertains to policy on this?
If the board is comfortable with 24 months, and that's really the question. I know Orange County attempted this in the mid-90s, and I believe the cap was 6 months, just by way of example. But again, it depends on the purpose. From a purely self-interested perspective, my lease is running out. I'd love to relocate over here at $100 a month. I'm paying $900 a month now. And I'm grateful for the space if my landlord is listening. But be that as it may, when people look at it, and the obvious people to take this space, quite candidly, are lawyers. I'm not sure you want lawyers who are using Madison as a base of operations when they aren't really in the community, but the leases as they are currently configured would certainly create that opportunity.
I tend to think 24 may be too long. I really do. I think that the longest would be maybe 12 months, maybe.
Yeah, for an incubator space, I could see that. If the folks that need the internet.
Yeah.
Typically, you don't sign a 24-month lease.
No.
And it's not a lease, it's still month to month. It's still month to month.
It's still gonna be a
It
month-to-month
can't
deal,
exceed
but I
24
think
months.
the idea is that we're not permanent landlords.
Right.
Competing with the private sector. The idea would be to get utilize this space as need be, and then hopefully other space will open up in the private sector so that they can go somewhere else.
Right, and we don't want to compete with private sector, that's for
Absolutely.
sure. And so, yeah, a lot of those are full and we're not letting people in their building right now.
Would we, the ones that we know about, the Pearl Building, we know is full. What's the other one, Tracy, the other large one?
Kevin McCaney has some space, I think he's full.
I'm missing, there's another large landlord that has a bunch of space, a bunch of office space full as well.
Montague Miller, that
Yeah.
building, the one we were just talking about too.
Y'all want to stick with 24 months?
Yeah, I think we ought to go down.
Yeah, 12 sounds,
12 reasonable?
yeah.
I think 12.
Any other comments on this?
Yeah, you do it for 12 and you lay out for a month and come back for another 12 or something. It's unlikely, I guess, but.
I don't think we have a long list. We don't have people who are.
No, we've just had people over the years,
Yeah, let's go with 12.
And we're not, and we haven't advertised. it.
No.
And we're not planning on advertising it, but I'm sure the word will spread. So nobody really knows.
I'm good with 12.
I'm good with 12.
Everybody good with the general gist of this?
Yeah.
I mean, right now it feels good to be able to help people, but the initial idea was to have an incubator, not technically an incubator, but entrepreneurship type thing where they start there and they actually do get their own storefront and fill some of the empty spaces.
All right, what about on this surge deal? We all hear that February 8th is gonna be the peak of COVID. Do we wanna postpone this or do we just wanna let Tracy proceed with it? I just say I'm kind of inclined just to move on with it, see what happens.
By the time, they fill out application, everything, the contract.
It's just a point of concern.
Oh, it is.
We need internet, but we're in the pandemic, so it's a conflicting situation.
General comments, Hobbs?
No, the only other thing that is I guess a point of concern is who would sign the leases and if the board wants to retain authority to approve the tenants by tenant, or if we can just delegate this to somebody. Certainly, I think that the day tenant, that's Tracy's shop, but for a more long-term tenant, might want to consider alternate signatories or approvals.
How would y'all want to do the month-to-month deal? You want them to come in front, not the business themselves, but have Tracy come and represent them and tell us, or, day-to-day, I think we leave with, I really do, I think we leave it with Tracy, let her deal with it and move on. I'm sure she'll keep close track of all of these and we'll have documentation to go along with it. What do y'all want to do on one? Want Tracy to come and give us a quick report and then we move from there?
Yeah, as long as it's not, doesn't make it too onerous, I'd be curious who was coming, looking at those spaces. I don't make it a headache for her or the potential leasers.
I can tell you to just generally, since it's not in stone. One is a patent person. She's a resident that works on patents for a firm. Another one is working with the VA. So it's kind of cool to hear these are residents.
Yeah, that's good.
And the neat, if you want some statistics for that. So now they're not driving to Northern Virginia and doing their shopping on the way home. They're actually local, if they were to be working from home and therefore spending their money at home.
Yeah, so I come in there tomorrow, the day after the board meeting, and say, I'd like to rent it for 6 months. So they're gonna have to, you're gonna call Clay to come in and sign this thing, or they gotta wait 2 weeks until we pass it as a board?
Sounds like you want me to wait 2 weeks and tell you first.
Couldn't Jack sign it? I mean.
Yeah, I think it's Bob's, good Bob's to sign it.
Hobbs doesn't want to sign it. That's what he didn't want.
Sorry, Jack.
Make Tracy, you've got to retain all the documents, month to month lease, and I don't think that they can sign a 6 month period. I think it's a month lease, and then we'll see how it goes. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Get Hobbs to sign off on it. Not enough for you, Chuck. Hobbs, that work?
Yes.
Looks like 5.
Yes, ma'am.
So you want Jack to sign them?
Yeah.
He's gonna kill me.
They don't need to come before the board.
No, don't, just come and just report to us, you
Yeah.
guys tenants. I mean, we don't need their businesses, we don't want to put them on.
This is
Board watch.
the long-term tenants, not
The long-term
day rate.
tenants. Right. We would like to know about your day-to-day tenants as well. I mean, gosh, it's kind of an interesting deal. Let's see how it goes. Everybody good with this? Yes.
Is there, Baycorp always asks this question when we do the renewal about people outside parties who are using our buildings, do we have adequate insurance? I guess the question is for Sean, is this statement in here that we don't provide any liability insurance for users, is that sufficient to cover us? Or do we need to talk to Baycorp about this?
We haven't had that conversation with Baycorp.
Okay, so this is sufficient.
And this is typically the way it's done. But, yeah, Baycorp said, as long as there's a lease, and the issue came up in the context of polling places.
Do they need to demonstrate insurance? Yes.
We've never required it, and it's kind of at their own risk. I mean, we would still have our premises liability insurance. But we're not insuring any of their personal property.
That works for me. We probably need a motion to do this one.
I agree.
Okay, let's see, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the 2 rental agreements. One being the Business Incubator Short-Term Nonprofit Service Provider Startup Agreement, and the other being the Daily Office Space Use Agreement for 110 North Main Street.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Good Lord, Jason, we've been talking about this for like 3 years.
Actually, it's been 6.
6, there you go, that's worse. Good. All right, any other old business?
We would have subletting back then.
New business. Mr. Hobbs, zoning subdivision application process clarification.
Yes, y'all, we're in the meeting where there's a discussion about the application process for special use permits, and this is nothing new. I've seen this me back and forth in 3.5 years here, certainly would be appropriate to push the board to have that position clarified. And I would point out that we've got, seems to me, 4 different cases where the board level approval has been requested. There's rezonings, there's subdivisions, there's special use permits, and there's site plans. There are different state code requirements on each of those things. The county zoning ordinance and county subdivision ordinance regulates these in different ways. I know that we had some inconsistencies in the way things were applied recently when it came to the ENS and stormwater management aspect of one site plan. I'd ask that the board consider moving to a program where this is better clarified, whether it's in the ordinances or in the application instructions that we put with the forms, so that everybody understands what the rules are for these situations. And I believe the local tradition is to route this to the county planning commission for it to study and resolve. The big goal, my big goal on this would be to clarify what the procedure is. And if somebody needs to have an approval in hand before the board acts, then maybe we can shortstop some of that at the application process, or at least make it well known before we advertise a hearing.
Wouldn't the easier way to do this, other than just studying this, because I mean, we've seen this so many times now.
Yeah.
I like the idea of using the application process. It seems that rezonings, subdivisions, and site plans all need health and highway approval prior to being on the docket. I mean, that just seems like that's just the way it is. Special use permits, though, I don't think need health and highway approval prior to being on there. I know I'm making it simpler than Mr. Hobbs wants, but I told Mike Moscow that we'd bring it up and clarify this. I'm pretty genuine about it. I think we should make the application process for those 3, rezoning, subdivisions and site plans, health and highway approval, before coming on, being on the docket for either the board or the planning commission. And those have to be in hand. But special use permits have to, don't require either. It can be frankly, something we could require if we feel it's needed before we make the approval, if that's warranted.
Yeah, I think that's an approach, but I would like to turn it over to the planning commission and to Ligon to come back with a recommendation on that. I mean, I spent a lot of today reading, subdivisions and site plans. Goodness, site plans, some counties don't even require a public hearing on the site plan. I mean, in the past, it sounds like this county certainly wants to see the site plan because we want to decide what color bricks got to go on sheets, right? But anyhow, it's just a little joke. So with that said, I'm with you. I think we can simplify it. I think Ligon and the Planning Commission has already simplified some of the subdivision stuff, and it's been very nice, and I think they can probably go further, but I would like to turn it over to them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
We have this on our agenda for our next meeting next week. It's been an issue for some time, as everybody knows. But on the special use permit, there are times I think we might want to have at least VDOT approval, because some of the SUPs might involve some type of entertainment scenario, application or whatever, and that would, I think, probably require VDOT approval. So the proposal was that if it was required under an SUP, at least that would be a proposal now, where those things were important and it could be done. If it was not necessary, then it wouldn't be required. But that's the way we were going to propose amending the,
It would be a case-by-case scenario
right.
when it pertained to special use permit.
If it's needed,
Yes,
we would have to do that.
absolutely.
But otherwise, like what Clay was saying, you guys are already looking at it that way.
No, it's been an issue as you know for some time.
With rezoning subdivision and site plan.
We're making it work out.
Well, I mean, it is the board that passes, that takes upon these, we're the ones that says, yeah, that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And that's what we did when it pertained to the, like Mike was quoting us last week at the planning commission on, well, we need these things for it. It's still gonna come back in front of us, I mean, no matter what. That's that. You want to task it to the planning commission and go from there? We don't want to.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Simpler is better, but you also want the folks we're gonna ask to do a lot of the dirty work to be happy with what we do. No offense.
My only one is, and I would go with the planning commission, that's fine. But like we had the case, the recent one, it was a recommendation to us, and then it was, well, good luck to y'all. And we made the judgment call that health and highway was not required.
And it was the right call.
So that he could proceed, and then we know he's gonna come back to get a building permit, so he needs the health and highway no matter what. So I mean, it's gonna come back to us for how we look at it. To the planning commission. That work for everybody? Good job. All right, moving on. Town of Madison Sidewalk project. Go ahead, Mr. Hobbs.
Well, let me, can I finish up one?
Oh, sure, by all means.
We do have a clause in the county zoning ordinance that relates to political campaign signs. Periodically this flashes in front of me. I think it's about the fourth time I've seen it in my career, but you're not supposed to have a sign ordinance that regulates political signs in a degree that's more restrictive than what you have on other signs. And so if we have an ordinance that says political signs have to come down within a certain amount of time, then that automatically flies afoul of that. So would like to ask that this be put on the list. It's not an emergency kind of thing, but when Ligon and the planning commission get around to it, if they could take a look at this part of the sign ordinance.
Absolutely. Good luck with that one.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, great.
Sure, it's not how the rule regulation states it's the enforcement.
Exactly. 100%.
Another, what is it we need? Another ordinance?
Anything I say there will be bad. Good luck. Good luck. All right, so we got the planning commission working on these things. You got anything else on that one, Hobbs? All right, let's move on to the town of Madison Sidewalk project.
Back in, September of 2019, the county agreed to the town with its sidewalk project that I understand has been partially funded with VDOT grant monies. So this is all good and going forward. But it was left to, I guess, the future to negotiate what this contribution might be. In the county's balance sheet, we're showing $32,979 in monies assigned to town business improvement. And it's my understanding that this money is sitting there. It was part of a revitalization revolving loan fund back in the day. I understand it was loaned out once. We were supposed to loan it twice before it became free and clear for the county, but so much time had passed. We asked the state to opine on what was supposed to happen with it, and we got a letter saying that that money is free and clear and owned by the county. Letters in your package. So the idea was that maybe this money that I guess there's some sense that it ought to be spent in town. This is a good use for it, and help the town with its project. So I want to put that in front of the board in the form of it's there. We'd like to support the town in this, but we've not heard from the town in terms of a formal request for this. So I suppose we could write the town a check, but better that we have communication with them before we.
They haven't actually requested.
They have, not formally.
Right.
Oh, no, oh, okay,
They definitely think this money should come.
okay.
I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I do think utilizing it in this way, probably not the worst idea. Right? And probably something that will enhance the town and make it a little bit better for everybody. Maybe. What do y'all want to do? Y'all want to get a formal request? Do you want to? They were talking about it, they talked about it 2 planning commissions, or 2 town meetings ago.
Yeah, and I asked them, and I can't remember whether you were there that night, but I asked them where the sidewalk project sits, and it's in engineering right now, as I understand it. So it is moving.
See if we can get some communications to them and see if they want it if we can give this as our in-kind donation as far as the sidewalk project. And then it'll be off our books, which I'm sure will make several people happier.
So get a formal request.
You can get in touch with, I don't know, Casey or Willie or whoever.
I can send a letter, but it might be good for the board's liaison to just bring it up at the council meeting.
All right. Any other new business? Information and correspondence? Anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Right, I guess it didn't get into your board package, but, Boys and Girls Club, has requested that they have an extension on their, $125,000 grant through the end of August. Yeah, and the reason is not because they couldn't allocate all of our funding to that program. This is my understanding. The reason is that it's just like what we did, is we moved dollars around into different buckets with this COVID. They found from their financial perspective, if they could extend that out through August with a different program, it would help their internally their finances.
Going into another budget year is not going to be a problem for you?
I actually don't see, they need to give us reporting, but I don't really see why, on something like that, it's just a grant. And they show the money and, they give us a number as of June 30th, and that's a lot simpler, that arrangement, than reimbursements or purchase orders or anything else. It's just basically, just a little piece that'll hang on into FY 22, I guess.
If MJ's okay with it, I'm fine with it. I do have concerns about this though. This bothers me in a big way, because they said they need $125K to keep the program going and to be able to support. Now it's stretching all the way into August. Something is not correct with this story.
Well, I don't have an understanding, and if they're gonna come here, maybe you can talk to them about it. I don't understand what circumstances have happened, why they decided to ask for this, but I can give you an example. One thing that could have happened is they got another funding source.
Right, and so now they don't need what we were.
Exactly, and that is not
Got this
right.
place.
But that's the way you juggle grants.
Not in this situation.
MJ, who did you talk to? Did you talk to James?
The request, I talked to Kate Lambert originally, but I think that they have a new CFO, and she came in, well, she's returning old CFO. She came in and looked at the numbers and thought that it might be more favorable for them if they could extend the program. And perhaps you, if they're gonna be here in the next week or so, maybe you wanna talk to them about it in person.
It may come up. Yeah.
I do think.
I
They
got
discussed
it.
with me. I told them in no event could they go beyond, into the next school year, because it's not clear that, you know, if the schools are in session next school year, they have a compliance issue. I mean, what rationale would they use? But I did tell them that to talk to the superintendent and make sure she was in support of that, and they have indicated that she is, so that's another source you could like.
Because of people. I'm gonna reach
Yeah, I
out to
can
somebody.
I'll
Does
reach
anybody
out to
have a
James.
problem with letting them proceed till August? I've got a
Maybe we
problem.
find
I mean, do you want it,
out
the problem is that we cut them a check at this point.
Yeah, we would have to modify, we've already given them the $125,000.
So how do we,
We would have to modify the MOU one more time.
so how do we get let's say that we don't agree with this. Do they cut us a check back?
No, I think it's more a matter of they could show the whole 25,000 as used.
125.
Yeah, the whole 125 is used. And by reallocating expenses or other revenue.
They're coming to see us. When are they coming to see us?
That's the way grants work.
They are coming to see us on the 4th, which is not confirmed. Y'all want to wait to make a decision till the first meeting in February?
So does their MOU right now say funds must be spent by December 31st or 30th?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We have to modify it. But the point is that they could demonstrate that if they wanted to. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the ability to shift money around in different buckets. So if you're gonna tell them like we want money back, they're just gonna come back and say, well, we spent it all. It's just, I mean, it's just like what Team Crop just did with that 183,000 that they got.
That's all Madison County.
She's taking money out of their school operating budget and moving it into code. That's what you can do.
But if they come to us and they say, well, you didn't grant us the August extension, the money's all gone. I think the optics of that are very, very poor. Let's get them here in front of us on the 4th, hopefully, see what they have to say. I mean, if they do, if they say, I understand the idea of moving this money away, and I got it, I know, we're not.
On our own books.
I know, but we did that on our own books because we're Madison County. We can move stuff from one bucket in Madison to another bucket in Madison.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, there's a big problem. We should get some clarity on that. Let's see what they say on the 4th. And we can make the decision on the first meeting. Or I think we can make the decision that day. Let's see what they have to say before we make anything on this. Anybody else got anything on this one? All right. Public comment. Public comment. Public comment. Yes, ma'am. This is Kristen Ferry. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Berry. Other public comment? Other public comment? All right, public comment's closed. We do have closed session this evening. Ms. Holton? Yeah.
I move that the board convene in closed session pursuant to the Virginia Code section A 2.2-3711A1 for discussion on the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, discipline, or resignation of the county administrator. B 2.2-3711A7 consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, or such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. And C 2.2-3711A29 for discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract or discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.